The NFL draft is in the book, so what exactly did the Rams get?
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. I am your host of Locked On Rams. Plus, I host the Rams pregame and postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN 710, right here in Los Angeles. I've been doing that since the Rams came back to LA way back in 2016. Make sure that you click that subscribe button on your podcast feed. That way you get Locked On Rams right there in your phone or your laptop or wherever you're doing it every single day. And check us out on YouTube as well. Our Locked On Rams YouTube channel is another good place for you to get the podcast as well. If you have not seen that, that is a very cool place to go as well. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so a big weekend in the NFL, right? Arguably the second biggest weekend of the NFL calendar outside of the Super Bowl weekend, the NFL draft. Everybody kind of reloads. There's movement. There are trades. There are guys moving forward. There are guys moving back. We know how the draft goes, and we know that the Rams do it very, very differently than everybody else. That being said, they did make 8 selections in the draft, and we're going to kind of go through exactly what it is that they got. We got the offense coming up first, and we'll get into the defense, and then they made a big trade to reacquire Tory Hill from the Cleveland Browns, we'll talk about at the end of the pod. So make sure that you stick around for that as well. Before we kind of get into where they are offensively and the draft picks that they made, they had 8 picks. 3 of them went towards offensive players along the way. I thought it was pretty interesting how the Rams were a real big part of the draft weekend, despite not having any really high picks. I think that they've really kind of come into their own as far as wearing the Super Bowl championship very, very well, and how they go about using the draft. I think it's kind of recalibrated a lot of other teams in the way that they're going about it as well. So we'll spend some time on that later on in the week, but let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about some of the draft picks that they made here over the weekend. Of course, 8 picks total for the Rams. They spent 3 of them on offensive players, 5 of them on defensive players along the way. Let's start with the offense. And no big surprise that 2 of the 3 offensive players that they went and drafted were offensive linemen. Logan Bruss was their number 1 overall pick at 104, third round, 104 overall, a guard out of Wisconsin. So they knew that they were going to go offensive line at some point. They also spent their last pick of the draft. That would be 7th round pick number 261. That goes to AJ Arcuri, who's an offensive lineman, a tackle from Michigan State. Okay, I think that's very, very important where they came from and who they played for. And then, of course, their last offensive player, Kyron Williams, a running back out of Notre Dame, 5th round, 164 overall. So 3 of their 8 picks spent on the offensive side of the ball. I think this is just the straight-up numbers game that the Rams are playing. They have needs on offense. In particular, they have needs in offensive line depth. That's why their first place, we talked about this coming into the draft, is either going to be defensive back, which we'll talk about coming up here in just a minute, or this is going to be something that they did on the offensive line. They went and got an offensive lineman from a place that makes very good offensive linemen, the University of Wisconsin, right? Those guys know how to produce offensive linemen. They know how to get them ready for the NFL draft. They went out and found a guy in Arcuri from Michigan State. Well, look at their center, right? Brian Allen is from Michigan State. Look at their right tackle, Rob Havenstein. He's from Wisconsin. They know what they're getting. They know what sort of regimen that these guys are going through. They know how they're getting ready to play in the NFL. And basically, they had a position in need, offensive line, guard in particular. So that's where Logan Bruss comes in. And I think he's got a very good chance to start from the very beginning. Now, who knows, right? We'll see whether or not somebody like Coleman Shelton kind of jumps into that role, or it's somebody else. Maybe they make a trade. Maybe there's somebody that gets cut from another team during training camp. We all know the other ways that they can come and find these places. But they know that because of the way that they operate in the draft, because they're not picking in the first round or the second round, or really not even until very, very late in the third round, that some guys that maybe are plug and play starters are not going to be readily available. That being said, if you throw enough assets at it, if you go out there and take more than just one shot and double up on some of these things, maybe you find somebody. And that's the game that they're playing, right? That this is the game of, okay, we have a hole on the offensive line, or we want to add some depth on the offensive line. Let's take a couple of guys here. If one of them hits, that's a win. Because I already know that I traded away my first round picks to go get Matthew Stafford. Would you rather have Matthew Stafford or a shot at a high level offensive lineman? Well, that seems like a no brainer to me. Would you rather have a second round pick or kind of just say, we're going to try to do a catch all in here and take a couple of guys and hope that one of them works out? I think it's pretty clear how the Rams have decided to go about this. And when you play at Wisconsin, when you play at Michigan State, these are guys that obviously have not played any NFL football, but they've played at the highest levels of college football. If you play offensive line, if you are a tackle at Michigan State, if you are a guard at Wisconsin, you've got some stripes. You've got some ability to play at very, very high levels. This is not a project where somebody's coming in from, a smaller school, maybe an FCS school. These are guys that are playing high-level football, that have played with very good coaches at very big programs with a lot of spotlight, and come in and ask them to add some depth along the way. It's not a huge ask. And again, the Rams picked players according to positions of need, mostly, which brings us to the next guy. I think it was a little bit surprising that we saw the Rams' third overall pick, fifth round, number 164, Kyren Williams, running back out of Notre Dame, until you look at exactly what his skill set is. According to everybody that knows these things. And by the way, I always get a little bit of a kick out of this. The draft expert, right? Somebody that breaks down this guy or that guy. Okay, if there was a real science to this, if there was, this guy runs this way, or this guy does this, or this guy does that. If there was such a thing as a draft expert, you wouldn't have misses, right? You do the best homework you can. You try to find the best guy. You try to find some measurables, as they say. Fact of the matter is, you just don't know. Nobody really knows for sure. Every once in a while, somebody's going to come in that's a deadlock cinch, a Peyton Manning, an Andrew Luck. Sure, there are some guys. Got Orlando Pace, right, to go more Ram-oriented. There are some guys that make a whole bunch of sense at the high end of the draft. But there's also a lot of guessing along the way. And sometimes with the way that the Rams have gone about it, when they see a player that they like, that they just really like a guy, they're going to take that guy. We heard Leslie talk about Bobby Wagner. Maybe I don't need a player at that position, but I really like that guy. He always regretted not taking Wagner when Wagner was coming out of the draft. He made it right by signing him as a free agent. But ultimately, I think that's where Williams falls into. He catches the ball really well out of the backfield. He he picks up pass protection really, really well as a running back. And that's something that obviously is incredibly important to what the Rams do. The Rams throw the ball a ton. They throw it to their backs a ton. They need to make sure that Matthew Stafford is protected, that you can send more guys out. You can do some things with your offensive lineman if you know that running back's going to pick up some blocking assignments along the way. And I think that's exactly what they've done there. So you look at what they did offensively. A position of need on offense, what was it? It was offensive line. They took 2 offensive linemen. They found a player that they really liked in Williams. Maybe it allows them to maybe make a move somewhere else. Of course, Darrell Henderson has had all sorts of health history. He's had a hard time staying on the field, so you never really know what you're going to get from him, other than when he plays, he's pretty good, but he doesn't play all that often. And Cam Akers, we've talked about him on this pod a lot. You just don't know where he is in his development. When he's right, he's really good. A little bit of a fumble bug, a little bit of a regression towards the postseason last year, but they got another weapon in the backfield right there as well. So that's the offensive side. What's coming up on the defensive side? That's coming up next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports information. You can find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's basketball playoffs, really here in LA. Maybe it's basketball futures along the way, who the next coach of the Lakers might be, how many wins they might have next year, and of course, the start of the Major League Baseball season. I told you about the Angels last time, right? The odds are getting shorter and shorter on the Angels. All of this stuff is available for you. BetOnline, your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking us out. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, which is really interesting to me how they went about it. So like we mentioned, 8 picks for the Rams here in the 2022 NFL draft. They spent 3 of them on offensive players, none on, special team guys, specialists, no kickers, no punters, which means they spent 5 of their 8 picks on defensive players. And they spent 5 of their 8 picks in a very specific part of their defense, right? You've got their number 2 pick overall, 4th round, 142nd, Jacoby Durant, a cornerback out of South Carolina State. Cornerback, defensive back. This is an area of need. Their 6th round pick, number 211 overall, Quentin Lake out of UCLA, a safety. You look at their one after that, Darian Kendrick, a cornerback out of Georgia, 6th round, 212 overall. A linebacker, Daniel Hardy from Montana State, was taken in the 7th round, 235. And then yet another secondary player, Russ Yeast, a safety out of K-State, 7th round, 253 overall. Okay, so a safety, a corner, another safety, and another corner. 2 safeties, 2 corners, and they made a trade for Tory Hill, which we'll talk about coming up here in just a little bit. Do you think the Rams knew what everybody else knew about this team too? And again, this is exactly what we were talking about from the offensive, only they've doubled down on it, right? If the Rams had a need at offensive line and they took 2 offensive linemen hoping to catch one of those guys that can help them maybe in the short term, maybe somebody's more of a developmental guy, but you have some depth there. What do you think they're doing by taking 2 safeties and 2 corners? And again, with the exception of Durant, who they took with their 4th round pick, 142 overall, you're talking about UCLA, you're talking about Georgia, and you're talking about Kansas State. UCLA and Georgia in particular, these are high-level programs. These are places where you are going to get good coaching, where you're going to see other NFL caliber athletes on a regular basis, and you got to be ready to go. I would not be surprised at all if you see somebody like Kendrick play a lot right out of the chute and maybe even find a way to get his way into the starting lineup at some point during that season. Because if you're playing at Georgia, we saw it, right? Georgia had 6 guys taken in the 1st round. They led the league, or I should say they led college football with most players selected in the draft overall. This is, you're going up against other NFL players in practice nonstop. You're going up against other NFL players when you're playing LSU and you're playing Alabama and you're playing all these other SEC schools that are just loaded with NFL talent. You are getting a trial by fire at the college level, and I think the Rams know that. And I think that the Rams understand that, not unlike Jordan Fuller, in the not too distant past, where Ohio State kind of falls into this category as well. And yeah, I'll take that guy. I'm not worried about putting him out there at a big moment. Now, somebody like Jacoby Durant, that's a little bit different. Coming from South Carolina State is very different than coming out of Georgia. He has not seen what we just described. He's not going up against a bunch of NFL players in practice. He's not going up against constant, just wave after wave after wave of NFL talent when you are playing a South Carolina State schedule, right? That's not a USC schedule. It's not a UCLA schedule, or certainly not an Ohio State and LSU and Alabama, Georgia, where it's just NFL guy, NFL guy, NFL guy. So maybe there's a little bit more of an on-ramp for somebody like Durant along the way. But the point being, when I've got 4 guys and I got a couple of places in need, if I hit on half of my guys, that's it. Now, the flip side is you have to hit on half of these guys, because if it isn't, now all of a sudden you're chasing. A whole draft has gone by. I'll use this as an example, and I don't mean to single this guy out, but I think it's a good example of kind of the opposite of where we are right now. The Rams took Tutu Atwell with their first pick last year, their first pick in the 2nd round, at a position that was not really something that they needed to do, but they missed. And we'll see. We'll see whether or not he develops or not. But after that first year, it'd be hard to call it anything other than a wait and see at best, and probably a miss if we're being more objective about it. He didn't play much. He didn't catch a single pass. He's small. He seemed to have trouble staying healthy. But you have some depth there. The Rams are going the opposite with it, because they don't have a ton of depth at corner. They don't have a ton of depth at safety. They're throwing bodies at it and hoping to catch a guy here or there. And that's what you need to do. This is not we have to hit on this one guy because we have one pick and this one spot at this one position. We have to hit it. It's no, you know what? Give me a DB. Give me another one. Give me another one. Give me another one. We'll play the numbers game. We will hope to bat 500 on these things, and that's good enough. And, oh, by the way, we'll make a trade along the way as well, because we can bring in somebody that knows our system really well. I think that the way that they go about doing this is incredibly smart. None of these guys have to show up and be great right away, but just some of these guys have to show up and be good enough right away. Find a way to get on the field. Find a way to make some plays. Find a way to make yourself useful at a position that maybe isn't loaded with other options. That's a successful draft. Think about it this way. If you are the New York Jets, if you are a team like the Jacksonville Jags, not only do these guys you're taking towards the top of the draft have to become good players, they have to become good players without having anybody miss along the way. Because if they're not, they're exactly where they are. They're picking right back near the top of the draft again. And then they got to get it right the year after that. And then you got to get it right the year after that. And maybe if you hit 3 or 4 in a row, look, the Bengals are a good example. They hit 2 in a row, Burrow and Chase. And boom, you saw how quickly it can happen. But if you miss one of those along the way, where are you? You're picking right back there again. The Rams are thinking, give me a bunch of picks late. I'll take your proven talent right now. And that's how we're going to go about the draft. I loved what they did in the first couple of days of this thing. I think that they're going to find, of those 8 players, 2 or 3 of them are going to be guys that you're going to see play a lot. A lot of these guys you're going to see in the preseason, which, we know we're not going to see any of the starters, right? We know we're not going to see any of the regular guys. These are names that you will see in the preseason, and Sean McVay and Les Snead and the coaching staff, they're going to try to figure out which of these guys you can put out there. Who can we put out there for a handful of plays a day? And then maybe a few more plays the Sunday after that, and a few more the Sunday after that. The next thing you know, there's a John Johnson, there's a Jordan Fuller, a guy that wasn't a super high draft pick, but all of a sudden is starting for you on a regular basis. I love what they did in the draft. I love the positions that they drafted. I love that they kind of doubled down in some of these spots because nobody knows for sure, right? But if I get 3 or 4 swings at it and I only need 1 or 2 hits, it's a pretty good way to do it. And that's certainly the way that they've done it. Now they've guaranteed themselves a hit with Troy Hill. That's coming up next. Let's talk a little bit about Built Bars, right? Summer is right around the corner, and you need stuff on the go. You're doing things. You're going to parties. You're going to the beach, the lake, whatever it is you're doing. You want some stuff you can throw in the bag and feel pretty good about it, whether you're taking a family vacation, you're going to do something, a little golf trip, whatever it is. Throw them in your bag, and you're always good to go. And the best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and they are delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for your health. With Built Bar, you can have both. It is just that easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. And have you tried the Built Puffs yet? You need to get on the Puffs. We're going a little crazy for the Puffs. I'm not going to lie. They come in great flavors, banana cream pie, even churro. Who doesn't want a protein bar, a good snack that tastes like a churro? Nobody. That's who. And only 140 calories. Sign me up, sign you up, sign all of us up. I can tell you they're 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. It's all true, but here's what you need to know. They're filling, they taste great, and it's a good choice. Go to Built.com to get all of your favorites, raspberry, double chocolate, so many others as well. They're all delicious and all new flavors coming out all the time. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. One more time, that promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, so we knew that the Rams needed some help in the secondary. That's why they took 4 defensive backs of their 8 picks in the 2022 draft. But they also got a little insurance as well when they reacquired one of their former players, Troy Hill. They made a deal with the Browns to pick him up for a 5th rounder in next year's draft, the 2023 draft. I love it. I love it because this could be the perfect example of what we've been talking about. It's a little bit easy to say, oh, would you rather have Jalen Ramsey or some first-round picks that may or may not be useful to your team at some point? Would you rather have Matthew Stafford for a couple of first-round picks that turn into guys that may or may not turn into NFL players? You don't know. That's an easy one, right? What about this? Would you rather have a 5th-round draft pick or Troy Hill? Troy Hill is not going to go to the Hall of Fame. Troy Hill is probably going to be a nickel guy for you, maybe a dime guy, maybe a guy that isn't playing 40 or 50 defensive snaps a game. But what is Troy Hill? He is a competent NFL player that knows exactly what it is you're doing in your organization, that has proven he can thrive inside your organization, that is a guy that you would want to have on your team, and he's going to come back in and he's going to pick up where he left off. And he's going to be an impactful player, not an impactful player in the sense that all of a sudden, you can start writing your name on the Lombardi Trophy again, but a 5th-round guy or Troy Hill. It seems like a no-brainer to me. And I hope the rest of the NFL continues to struggle with this. I hope that they continue to think, no, give me picks. Picks are where it's at, and you can have the proven NFL commodities. This is a perfect example to me of somebody that you would want for that amount of for that cost, for that price. Now, look, maybe he doesn't play. Maybe he doesn't have that little spring. Maybe he doesn't have the playmaking ability that he had when he was here last time, where he scored a couple of touchdowns for you. So what? It's a 5th-round pick. The Rams have plenty of picks in the later rounds. They have plenty of guys that you can try to stopgap that with. We just talked about it. They just spent 4 picks on defensive backs. They had 2 safeties, 2 corners. They have plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. This is it, right? And Troy Hill is maybe plan A to take over some of these spots along the way. Maybe not the corner. Maybe he's back, like I said, at a nickel spot. But these are guys that they know. These are guys that they feel like they can just drop right back in there. This is not apples to apples, but it's apples to pears, maybe. Think about what you did with Eric Weddle last year, where you just, I need somebody that knows what we're doing here. Well, call Weddle, see if he can do it. And all of a sudden, there he is. There he is. He's ready to go. He's ready to do what he needs to do. And now, could he have done it his whole season? Probably not, being out of the league for a couple of years. But for a short period of time, he's ready to go. And it feels like that's what they're getting ready to do with Hill again. A guy that knows the system, a guy that doesn't have to be totally built from the ground up, a guy that's a proven NFL player, not an all-pro, not a guy that's going to go to the Pro Bowl, not a guy that's going to get 6, 7, 8, 10 interceptions, but you need him to make a play or two over the course of the season. You need him to be where he's supposed to be. Yeah, let's do Troy Hill. Let's give it a shot at a very, very low cost along the way. All right, that's going to do it for our post-draft Locked On Rams. Good time for the Rams. They no big names, nobody that's going to make your socks roll up and down, but those 8 players they drafted in the Troy Hill acquisition, you're going to have 4 or 5 guys that are going to play some meaningful snaps for the Rams coming up in 2022, I should say. 2023, we'll see. We'll see how many of those guys are there or whether they need to roll it back all over again. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every day. Now make Locked On NFL your second listen. The schedule may be dark, but the NFL never stops, and neither does Locked On NFL. Get insights and opinions from hosts including Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, and Tony Wiggins, plus local Locked On NFL hosts repping all 32 squads. There's no offseason for real fans, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.